Hi, I'm Dr. Gaby Cora and welcome to my show, Dr. Gaby's Take, Make Life Interesting. Hi, we're on Season 1, Episode 3. We're going to talk about innovation and creativity. Well, this is a very interesting topic, and if we just think back and look at all those inventions from the beginning of the 20th century, we can see the beginning of airplanes, automobiles, and even radios. However, by the end of that 20th century, we could see spaceships. We could also see cell phones, we could see computers, and we could also see wireless internet. What a difference from that beginning of the 20th century to the very end of it. And now we're heading into the second decade of the 21st century. So what's next? Well, I have a couple of questions to share with you. One is creativity and innovation changing through time, or is it the same? And we could anticipate that because there are so many inventions that have taken place throughout the rest of the 20th century, and now in the beginning of the 21st century, we have more things to kind of put together and play with and have fun with. So there may be even a greater opportunity to be even more innovative and to be able to apply more of what has already been created or has already been invented in a way. A second point is that the immediate access that we nowadays have to information makes it so much easier because we can really build on whatever next step we need to go for, knowing how to access the first step in a much easier way. Whereas before we may have needed to do a lot of research to try to figure out how to even get started. But now, with this internet access, it makes it a lot easier to go on to the next step and to even do it yourself. A third point here is how there has been this evolution from being a passive observer, for example, when watching TV, to being an active player when you're on the internet searching information and putting things together. That's been an interesting experience. The other thing that is also interesting to look at is, in the beginning when we had some of these inventions and we were using them, we may have been using them as groups. So for example, it was very common for people, for families, to gather around a radio or to gather around a television, whereas these days many people tend to have that experience individually. So you may be on your own computer, you may be listening to your own music, and at the same time there have been some interesting opportunities to also, for example, play games globally with a team formed in very different places of the world, with people that you may not even know. So it is interesting to look at some of that evolution in terms of innovation and even collaboration, having access to people that 50 years ago you would not have really have access to at all. Another point that always comes to mind is the eternal question, is it nature or is it nurture? Creativity is more of something that we're born with. However, what's very important is, well, are we given the opportunities to bring that creativity to life? So we may be extremely creative, but if we're not in the right place at the right time, our creativity may not manifest itself as much as it would in the at the right place at the right time. So it will be very important to try to promote those great connections, those great opportunities. So, and this is important for kids, so for parents to know their kids' talents. It's very important for teachers to know what their kids' talents are, and it's very important for employers to also know what their employees' talents are so that there could be a good match. Another point here is formal education conducive to more innovation and creativity? And in general, my experience has taught me that that's not necessarily the case. I wish there were tons of Juilliard schools for very creative people aside from the arts, but that's not really the case. And unfortunately, much of the education is more left brain in very many ways rather than a very integrative approach to left and right brain. We have to also look at the teachers and the professors' ability to combine or to be creative themselves. to be able to enhance some creativity in their students. So this is a very interesting point. And I've heard, from very different areas, some creative writers who do not want to pursue additional education because they are so creative on their own, and some of their experiences has really limited their ability to continue to be creative. And it's been the truth in many of our super creative innovators, such as Steve Jobs or even Bill Gates. If we look at their career path and dropping out of school. So that's an interesting point here to look at it. But the most important thing is to really try to provide for opportunities so that people can discover their true creativity and they can implement and manifest their creativity. Now, a third point, which I think becomes even more and more important during the 21st century, is the idea of becoming more and more collaborative. So there's always going to be this fight in terms of, do we need to be competitive or collaborative? If we're collaborative, then we're not going to be the first. And if we're not the first, then the world is not going to know that we were the ones who really climbed that mountain before anyone else did. Well, unfortunately, if we look historically, we can assume that sometimes that competition has really limited progress. So we see this in science, for example, where one investigator stole a virus from another investigator, and because instead of continuing to collaborate together, each one continued to work on their own, this may have affected our ability, for example, to cure AIDS years ago. So this is something interesting and important to look at. The other thing that we wonder about is if, for example, Edison and Tesla had collaborated instead of fighting about whether it was direct or alternate conduction, could there have been some other advancements around electricity earlier on? We wonder about those things too. But in this era, there seems to be a lot of the collaborative spirit going on, and this is something that's going to be very interesting, particularly during this 21st century, and particularly with globalization, where there's not just some communications going on with a couple of investigators that live or work close by, but where we can so easily be in close contact with other investigators, with other like-minded individuals from around the world, from the other side of the world, that this is going to enrich our lives and hopefully our creativity and our innovative spirit. Thank you for joining, and hope you will enjoy my interview today. My guest today is Patrick Meyer. Patrick is a thought leader, innovator, and he's an advisor to Fortune 500 CEOs, just about anything, a strategic thinking, a creator, really someone who's brilliant. I hope you enjoy the interview as much as I have on innovation and creativity with Patrick Meyer. Hi, I'm Dr. Gaby Cora, and I'm here with Patrick Meyer, thought leader, author, speaker. Patrick, there's so much about you, and it's so wonderful to have you with me today.
Well, it's so nice to be with you.
You've had so different steps within your life, and maybe it looks like you may have lived different lives within one, right?
For sure.
All the things that you've done. Tell me a bit about what you're doing these days, and then we can go back in time. But how about these days? What's up with you these days?
Well, in the last 7 or 8 years since I had sold my company, my passion has been to help organizations shift their game. So what I saw was a problem. A lot of companies were in a 1.0 or 2.0 model. 2.0 meaning online, internet, Microsoft, kind of the way it was for the last 15 years. And with new technologies and new social dynamics going on, and social media and e-commerce, there's a big shift that's necessary into what I call 3.0. So people kept coming to me and asking me to help shift their game, their whole marketing group, their whole business team, their board of directors, to educate them and help guide them. So all of a sudden, I've just continued to drive against this as more and more demand has been going on.
So tell me more about the 3.0 game. What is that today, and why is it different from before?
A 3.0 game would be, and very few companies are totally there. It might be Apple, it might be Google, a few others that are at a 3.0 game. But it's a transition from 2.0 to 3.0, where you want to be moving from the online world to a much more dynamic, much more mobile, much more social world. And so companies, you can see that's going on, but they're struggling with it. And they need to have insight-driven solutions and approaches, understanding the dynamics of people and marketplaces and technology. And so I'm helping companies do that. That can happen with a CEO that wants to bring a shift in his game for his C-suite, or it could be his entire sales organization. So that could be a mix of iPads for the sales force and iPhones and Google Androids. It may also be new forms of content. The social piece, we see it going on with Facebook and with Twitter, but it also moves into the organizational dynamics. So how do you use social thinking to get people to have a dialogue all across your organization and across your customers and constituents?
What is it that you see as the most common roadblocks for people to move ahead? Because it is a mindset in a way. It's not even about what to do here and there. What is it that you see as those roadblocks, and what do you usually need to work with to shift that?
Well, I think there's a lack of momentum or desire to grow for a lot of companies. They get set in their ways, they focus on their customers, they focus on what they do. And that's great, right? Particularly if they have a good product or service. But they have to evolve their game, right? Every day you need to move the stake. And so, one of the reasons that you have people laying back is that they're caught up with where they are now. No one's bringing new insights. No one's telling them about customer thinking or what the consumer's doing. But at the same time, you'll have a CEO who's been on an iPhone or iPad with his kids for the last year, and he walks into his CTO and his CEO and he goes, I want the entire company in the next 12 months to be on an iPad, or I want it to be on smartphones. So those kind of mandates are forcing organizations to shift. So you're seeing it on the consumerization of IT, and it's popping up with the CEO or C-suite or president of a company, or the young people in organizations. They're bringing forward ideas. Some of them are technology-based, some of them are socially based. Once again, social meaning Facebook and Twitter. And it's starting to bubble up from the bottom. It's also, in some cases, coming down from the top.
Have you always been fascinated with technology, for example? Has it always been that way for you?
Yeah, it's been something that I've loved. Now, my dad, interestingly, my dad was left brain, right brain. He was an engineer, also a playwright. He was a writer. He started an advertising agency. He invented things back in the 50s, like mini computers. He was always creating things. So he's left and right brain, and that's in my background. My mom is a creative director, was a creative director at one of the top ad agencies in the 50s and 60s. So she started as a receptionist, first one in her family to go to college, went to Pratt Institute, came out, worked as a receptionist, and worked her way to the top as a top creative director of an ad agency in New York. So for me, the background of the marketing thinking and the creative thinking is also combined with the engineering and the tech side. So no surprise, years later, what do I love to do? Take technologies, combine them with business thinking and marketing thinking to drive the hell out of business.
If you could share with us the different lessons learned that you've had at your different stages within life. So, for example, as president of SourceBits over the past few years, what are the lessons learned that you carry with you?
Okay. I'll give you a couple lessons between Fusion 5 now, maybe even a little bit of my days running brand Coke for the Coca-Cola Company.
And we can go into the different sections if you'd like. That'd be great.
But what's interesting is when I look back over things that I've done and what's really worked well, and or examples of what I've worked on where it was a car that was launched, or it was a whole new shift towards a new generation, or bringing in new technologies. There are always a couple things that stand out, and I always go back to the fundamentals. One of which is you need to immerse yourself in whatever you're doing, right? So that's I1. But you also need to be grounded in the insights and the fundamentals. That includes what I call the business drivers, right? So I'm always relentless when somebody comes to me and they say, look, can you give us some advice? We're building this new tech venture. We want you to be on the board. We want you to be an advisor. I'm like, great. let me see your business plan. I look at the business plan, but then I really want to know, what are the drivers? What are the drivers of this business that will enable you to be successful? And what's your advantage? And what do you have that's patentable? Or what's the technology that gives you an edge? Another piece that I always find, so that's about the drivers and insights. The other piece is always to understand, and Wayne Gretzky said this, skate to where the puck is going to be. The reason he scored so many goals and had so many assists, he said, I always skate to where the puck is going to be. Now that sounds obvious, but most people will come to you with an idea that's today-based. I don't want today-based, I want 12 to 18 months out. So skate to where the puck is going to be, paint the scenario of where will we be in 2012, 2013. Where will people be with smartphones? Where will young adults be? What's going on with the economy? What's going on in other countries around the world? You know, what are the dynamics that are going to affect your business? And so that's one of the fundamentals. You know, I always focus on where the puck is going to be, paint the picture, then come back and let's talk about how relevant your product or your service is going to be.
So with that eye in the future, what do you see ahead? And where do you think, where do you feel we're heading in terms of technology and in terms of opportunities looking into 5 years from now?
When I help people, particularly CEOs, C-suite, friends, coaching, etc., helping people shift their game, I focus on a couple of things. You know, one is mobile, one is social, and one is retail. And that can also be retail/local. And I'm focused there because those are drivers against the business. So no matter what business you're in, mobile is going to have an impact. The fact that people can be walking around in the world, tapping on things, downloading things, apps, etc., and they want to know where to go, they want to buy something, they go like this, or they speak in, they say, Gaby Cora, right? And up you come, and I'm looking at you on YouTube. Right? That kind of technology in my hand, in my lifestyle, is going to change how I buy, shop, share, etc. So that's one. The second one is social. You know, people think about Facebook and how important that is. Social is bigger than Facebook. Social is an approach to bring in people and their desire to share and to have fun together. So everything we do has to have social built into it. When you build a product, if your marketing plan next year, social's there. Not just Facebook, but the whole thinking about how will people share you, right? So that's the second thing. And by the way, social links to mobile because all the growth that's coming in mobile and all the growth that's coming in social, on Facebook and on Twitter, is all coming with the two of them together, fused together. So Facebook is even flat at this point, and yet when you look at the growth, you know, they're experiencing growth like this. It's all coming from the mobile component of Facebook. So that's a second piece that's really important. The third piece is local or retail. The ability with your phone, with new technology that's coming, to buy with a Google Wallet and a product that I'm part of LinkedIn with, it's called Thin Air, which enables you to tap on print ads and outdoor boards and packages and whatever, and just tap, not even open an app, but just go like this, and up comes you speaking on my phone, or latest designer is talking on my phone, or I like that a lot, and I just touch it, it downloads an app right there. So that whole piece of new technology helping you shop and go through your world is going to change all the dynamics. You'll just go like this. You won't even have to enter your credit card. You'll go like this. Oh, if you're a wedding dress, oh, I like that a lot. Click. And next thing you know, it's coming from Amazon.com directly to your house 2 days later. So the e-commerce side of that, or the ability to tap and pick up a coupon and walk 50 feet at a vending machine and get a buy one, get one free Coke. That's going to change everything.
So it's a world at the tip of your finger, and where space is insignificant, and in a way time is as well.
Right.
Like, 20 years ago when we were thinking about sending a letter and receiving it in a week and sending a response within a week and getting that back prolonged you even wanting to receive anything.
If you think about the 2.0 world, right? You were at your computer, you had a browser, 18-year-old technology, by the way. You have a browser, you're online, you're going to a website, pages are coming in and out. That's all outdated. That's all yesterday. Because now with the technology, it's in your hand, it's in your world, it's on the go, it's sharing it with your friends. So it's a whole different game. And then you couple it with payment technologies, with what's called NFC, near field communications, the ability to pay with your phone, that'll take a year or two to get there, but that changes everything. So as a business, as a proprietor, as a corporation, you have to factor these things in to where you're going.
What are you seeing from this other perspective? We tend to be pretty techy at home, and we had wireless connections at home before anyone would have had them individually. When only businesses had Wi-Fi, we had Wi-Fi at home. So what we've seen, my husband and I, with our kids as they've grown, is a bit of a difference between what some people have access to versus other people, even if they have access to the same computers and or mobile phones. It's more the utility, or how would they know how to use all of this. So what are your thoughts about this segmentation in the whole in the whole world? I think we're going to see some very distinctive differences between different countries, different people in different areas. What are your thoughts around that?
Let me share with you the dynamic going on in the U.S., then I'll share with you what's going on globally. And the global piece is something because I've been doing personally, or leading, roadmap development for corporations with mobile and social around the world. But let's start with the U.S. because it's easy to digest. I was in front of, I went to Villanova, I'm on the board of the business school, and I was there with a whole bunch of CEOs and senior players, most of which were probably over age 40. And everybody's talking about business dynamics and interest rates and all the things that are important. And I said, what about mobile and social? How are you grasping as a corporation with the social media and what's going on? How are your executives in their 40s, 50s, and 60s doing? And one of the CEOs up on the panel came back, and very progressive apparel company, he came back and he said, Patrick, you're exactly right. Matter of fact, we've got people in our 30s that don't even get social. He said, it's a big challenge for us. And yet the entire population has shifted to social and Facebook and mobile and other things because the consumer is moving really quick. And so one of the conclusions out of the collective group was they need to take care of all those senior executives or mid-level executives that really don't understand it, and they need to train them. And the point that I made to them was, you've got a whole generation of kids that don't have jobs right now in their 20s. And they could be picking up jobs and helping you train your executives on mobile and social and what's going on with digital and gaming, etc. And they all concluded, wow, what a great idea. We could hire some of those young students to come in, mix them with our senior executives, our seasoned executives. So that's a dynamic that's going on generationally, right? Now, there are a lot of baby boomers that are getting there very quickly because they've got their smartphone or their iPad, and they're learning really quickly. So I have hope that that's all coming, and it's coming quick with apps and different things. So in the U.S., you've got, and there's an income dynamic too. There are lower price point smartphones that are getting there now, that are getting to everybody, particularly young adults, and gradually it's making it across the population. There are a lot of haves that have got the really fancy Apple iPads and the latest iPads. Nonetheless, the whole population is getting into the new smartphone technology. 55% this past June of phone owners had smartphones, right? By next spring, it'll be up to 72%. So at that point, everybody, for the most part, has got a smartphone. Now, let me tell you where that will take us. As that starts to move and people start to get apps, and they're on Facebook mobile, right? You now have a population that's very savvy to fairly decent knowledge of smartphones. So companies have to step forward and be there with people because they expect them. Let me take you over to global, what's happening. In China, right now, there are approximately 10% of the households have PCs. Here in the States, we've got PCs, multiple PCs in every household. Over there, for most people, 90% of the population, the first time that they're going to have an internet experience, it's going to be on a smartphone. It's not going to be on a PC. There's a whole leapfrog effect that's happening in many of the developing countries around the world, where husband and wife and the child, at night, they've got a little smartphone, and they're looking at the internet for the first time ever. So that's going to shift the game. They project that by 2015, almost 1 billion smartphones will be sold in China. Now, those might be low-end Samsung phones or China Telecom at a different price point, but people will be on the internet.
And socially connected.
And socially. You know, for example, you think here in the U.S. that we're pretty savvy on Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook. Even your grandmother's on Facebook. In Brazil, the penetration and the usage of social is double what it is here in the U.S. So there's some really interesting dynamics going on around the world with mobile social and this new one that's coming, which is local and retail combined.
The lovely thing of what's happening is, again, we were talking about space and time in a way. If that won't make a big difference, then we can be connected with most people at any time from around the globe.
Well, I'm gonna share with you what motivates people. There is an app that we developed about 2 years back called Knocking, and it was an idea that a couple of us had, and we started to build it. We built it with my own company, SourceBits. Matter of fact, that's how I actually went to India to be president of SourceBits, was that we were working, we were kind of the marketing group working on Knocking. Knocking was an idea, which was smartphones came out, the ability to go like this. I touch my phone, and let's say you're in Miami and I'm in London at the U2 concert, and I go, I'm going to share this with Gaby, and I go like this, and I touch your number, and you hear a knock knock. You look down on your phone, and there's Patrick knocking. You accept. I'm showing you live, broadcasting, Bono on stage, all the way back live, and you're picking up the whole concert, right? Now, that was the first app that we developed. We didn't even have to promote that. Once it came out, people were our advocates, and we had 3 million downloads in the first year. It grew faster than Twitter and Foursquare, right? And that little bit of technology was driven by an insight that 82% of people hunger to share their moments every day with their family and their friends. So if your daughter has a birthday, you want to share that moment. And that insight helped us create this technology, short form, mobile to mobile, live video. And so that's an example of how things are shifting. And out of that comes opportunity.
Was there a time in which things or life was not as clear to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to tell you a story that kind of surprises people, and I normally don't share this. I was such a loser up until I was a freshman in college. And I was born premature. My mom tells the story that they thought I was either slow or ADD or even one point autistic. And I remember being a little boy in second grade having the teacher tell my mom, he's slow, maybe we should put him back. We're not sure that he's going to do well in this environment. And there was a point when my sister was going to be moved, skip a grade, and I was going to be put back. My mom said, no, we're not going to do that. So as I went through elementary school and junior high school, and just in high school, I was always a bad student, and I was always late and behind, whatever. When I got to college, all of a sudden I found a way to shift my game. Now that happened to be an organization, my fraternity, and doing things that were cause-related. And all of a sudden, I was into something, and everything popped open, and I found a way to grow.
So what was the turning point?
I think it was caring about something. Well, part of it was also progressing and catching up. I was smaller. I was, born months late, so I was always behind. I was born in November, so I was always late in getting there. When I got to college, all of a sudden it was equal playing field, and then there was a vehicle. And at Villanova University, it was the university and also my fraternity. And we were creating a fraternity that we wanted to be the best it could be. And that was something I believed in. And I went from being a follower to being a leader who really cared. And my game completely shifted. And then what it enabled me to do was to understand that you have to follow your dreams and you need to plan for them, and many things that I use now. And that was a complete shift in everything I did. And then I went from there, I worked at the Gillette company and new products and developing ideas, and I went to the Coca-Cola company and on. So I look back on it, and I always knew that eventually I would get there, and my desire to do things and have an impact was so strong.
So Patrick, what's fascinating too is to see that you felt so behind as you were, in school, high school and everything, and yet you really are a thought leader who has an eye in the future these days.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I had a business partner when he and I created Fusion 5. We worked together for 20 years. He was dyslexic when he was younger. And when we built Fusion 5 with 100 people, it was 100 of the most passionate, brightest, innovative marketers. They weren't, and many of them had MBAs, whatever, but it was more a drive inside them. And if you went back on most of them, you'd find that they had some kind of challenge, right? And Steve Jobs was the same way. Steve Jobs was really challenged. He was adopted, but he really had a tough time, right? So there is something to being challenged when you're young. It sets up drive and desire and ability to think or be adaptive.
Different can be good.
Yeah.
In very many ways. And the other interesting thing is for that creativity to come into play, for that innovation, but you also have this other aspect about yourself, which is you get things done. You are able to ground and get things in a very concrete way. So it's not just the creativity about wanting to paint a beautiful painting, but also getting it done. That it looks like that's really crystallized all your work throughout all these years.
Yeah, what I found is that there are a lot of people who keep it all up here and it's very theoretical, and I'm a driver. I take it from the strategy and idea and drive it to the marketplace. And I had a client who was the top guy at Daimler Chrysler, and he had his CEO coach do a 360 on all of his key pillars, and they were all internal, right? And I was the one that was outside. And I sat down with the CEO coach, and she wanted to know about him, but she was also gauging his pillars. And I realized that. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So she became my CEO coach after that. And she taught me an interesting thing. She said, Patrick, there are different people, different approaches, that some people do one thing and they do it perfectly, and they take it out to fruition. Other people are multilinear and they have a couple things going on. Then there are also mega matrix and matrix thinkers, where you've got 16 things going on. I'm mega matrix with like 64 going on at all times. But she said a very important piece is the ability to action, to go from either mega matrix, whatever, and to rapidly drive into a multilinear path and get it out the door. She said the other thing that's interesting is processing speed and energy. Everybody has their own ability to process at a certain speed, and everybody has their own body energy, your own tempo, right? So the ability to take ideas and thinking and move them to action is something that comes right out of you, right? It's something you need to work on and be aware of.
Were you aware of finding your own tempo when things shifted for you, when you broke through?
I think that there's a certain kind of adrenaline pumps through your body when you do something you really like and it's having an impact, that you want more of that. You want to, I want to do more of these things. So you find your own capacity, right? Next thing you know, you've got a lot of stuff going on. I have to turn things down. There are so many things that come my way. And that also goes with working with people you love to work with. Like the fact that we're together working or talking is all about like energy and positive thinking, etc. You find those people, out of those people come opportunities, and at some point you actually have to be very selective because you're over your capacity. And
you are very much into finding those energies and being very aware of them too, because other people may have them right in front of them, but they don't see them operate there. So you're very intuitive about that too.
I think that everybody can be if they focus on it. One of the things I used to teach my team at Fusion 5 is that we would walk into a room, and let's say we're walking into the Coca-Cola company, and it's 4 of us. We would walk in with a certain energy. People respond to energy in the first 10 minutes. So when we walk in and it's Fusion 5 and it's the look and the feel and the energy, or maybe even how we reached out to them before we even got there, that we're walking through the door, boom, people know if they like you, if they don't, within 10 minutes. Their head then follows and provides the rationale as to why they like you, right? But that first 10, 15 minutes is all about energy and chemistry.
That's so true. When did you find your life 3.0? When did you reach it?
I found professional 3.0 probably with Fusion 5, where I was doing what I really loved. I was building an organization that inspired people. We weren't focused on making money. We were making a lot of money, but we were focused on like doing amazing work. We were doing it around the world with new car concept, new footwear, and working with Nike and Virgin and amazing companies. So I found my professional 3.0 at that point. Right? And there's kind of an inner self-assured, comfortable feeling that you have. For me, the Life 3.0 took more work, and that was probably after my mom had passed away, and using Tony Robbins as a vehicle to help reach out and see what's important for me. And I had actually done his Life Mastery series. So over a couple year period, with the professional 3.0 already going great, it was a question of just being aware of what do I have, family and friends, and where I was going, and where were places that I needed to round out and build more. And that just happened to be one vehicle. But everybody can find different ways to get there. But I think it's really looking at what's important to you. And an interesting thing that in one of Tony Robbins' advanced courses he does, it's called Date with Destiny. He has you look back on your life, and as a little girl and little boy, what were the dreams that you painted in your brain? And all the way through to age 18, you're putting things inside your mind that you want to do, right, that are really important to you. And he has you go back to that point. Then he has you look at where are you in your life. So if you're in your mid-40s or you're in your 60s, and you look back on what you wanted to do as a little girl, a little boy, and you aren't there, it's a big problem, right? It's really painful. But for me, it was great. I looked back and I said, wow, I know exactly what I want to do. So going forward, I said, over the next X number of years, I want to do what I call touch, love, and inspire. I want to touch, love, and inspire people that I meet. So if I meet you as a potential mentee, a young student that needs some guidance, or I meet you on a plane, that happens to be where we met. But to touch, love, and inspire. In other words, to connect, not just do this, but to touch and to inspire in some shape or form. So that has become my mission going forward over the next several years, next 10 years, 20 years, whatever. And that's why the Villanova Ice Center and the Ice Award, or helping out, or the Steve Jobs thing, or writing the books, that's about, where are you going, what impact can you have, the balance of your life.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So you can see I have that planner side,
Yeah.
The roadmap. I made sure that I had that right to the end,
Hope you have enjoyed the show on innovation and creativity and the interview with Patrick Meyer as much as I have. And now, as usual, let's try to think about a couple of things that can be helpful to make life interesting. The first one is, are you creative, and are you spending the time to be creative? I remember one of the most wonderful opportunities that I had while I was a researcher at the National Institutes of Health was to meet daily with one of my fellow investigators. And what we did was, aside from drinking some wonderful coffee at the hospital, it was also to create, to come up with what we thought at the time were even crazy ideas that could really help the people that we were serving. So at the time, I was a researcher in the obsessive compulsive disorder unit, and we were thinking about different ways in which we could help people through genetic studies, through neuroimaging studies, through transcranial magnetic stimulation studies, as well as through pharmacology. And at the time, we were coming up with some ideas, this is more than 10 years ago, that may be quite active or quite possible today. So the interesting thing was, we were not killing each other's ideas. We were just having fun. We were trying to be as creative as possible. And we really had a mission to try to figure out how we could put all those ideas together so that we could help people. The second part is, you really need to keep a notebook, or keep a way in which you're recording some of these ideas. You may have a spark of a brilliant idea, and it will come and go. So a lot of it is exercising, and just bringing these ideas together. The other important thing is not killing the idea. Sometimes you may have a brilliant idea, and your next automatic thought will be, oh no, that can't be done because. So I would say, if you really want to go into a creative process, try to really focus on all the ideas that could be, and then if you want, later on, try to prioritize those, try to figure out which are more feasible than the rest, but really try to devote some time to allow yourself to be creative. And the third part is, remember that creativity touches each and every aspect of your life. Many people relate creativity to just artistic endeavors, when in fact creativity can touch everything that we do. The way that we dress, the way that we speak, the way that we think, the way that we relate to one another. So have fun, enjoy, and make life interesting.